Our guest today has lived through storms most of us can't imagine. Raised in a religious cult on the south side of Chicago, he grew up in poverty, stripped of identity, and suicidal by the age of 18. He ran from the pain, joined the Air Force, and found himself in the middle of 2 combat tours in Iraq, dodging mortars, praying to make it home, and watching too many brothers and sisters never return. But coming home didn't mean the battle was over. The war followed him in the form of anxiety, depression, divorce, and a life lived numb inside the comfort zone. Then came the turning point. Logan refused to stay a prisoner to his past. He rebuilt from the ground up, chased his dream, and became a successful live TV director. Now he's on a mission to help others break free from trauma, fear, and the false identities that hold them back. He's proof that you can stop just surviving and start truly living. Please welcome Logan. Welcome to the show, Logan.
Appreciate you, my friend. Thanks, Donald.
Yeah, man. I've been looking forward to this. You do a couple things that I'm extremely interested in. I love doing audio and editing videos and that type of stuff. So, I'm looking forward to digging into this.
Oh, yeah. It's a hell of a journey, my friend. Whew. I can't even believe it myself sometimes.
No, I get it. I get it. You know, I wrote a book about my journey through the military, and I felt the same way as I was rewriting it. I was like, man, is this even real?
Dude, I'm in the process of writing my book now, and I'm looking back and I imagine little Carlos in in growing up in Chicago and where I've gone, what I've done. Like I can't imagine.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So why don't we just dive right on into it, man? Let's start out with as you grew up, because it seems like that's where the story starts.
Story does start there. I grew up poor on the south side of Chicago to a single mother. You know how it goes. You know, we didn't have a lot of extra things, but we had everything we needed. You know, I was an only child, and my mom was so determined to not let me fall into the trap and the cycle that so many of other, brothers and sisters fall into. And so she was super strict. And as a child, you don't understand it. But I remember, riding in the backseat of my mom's 1990 Honda Accord, and she would make me kneel down on the floor in certain neighborhoods so I didn't see the drug addicts and the wine heads and the streetwalkers outside. But that was how intensely she was like, this kid is going to make it.
Yeah.
So, as you mentioned, I grew up in a super strict religious cult. We weren't allowed to eat chocolate. We weren't allowed to watch cartoons. We weren't allowed to celebrate holidays, birthdays, anything like that. And so growing up as a kid, you just want to be normal. Yeah. You just want to really just be like everybody else. I wasn't even trying to, be the coolest kid. I just didn't want to be beat up and made fun of for being different. I wasn't allowed to play sports. And in the late 80s, early 90s is the peak of Jordan era. I wasn't allowed to be present and enjoy that amazing accomplishment that, the city was rejoicing about. And so just, it felt like time after time, I really just kept getting pushed back. And as a child, you don't understand it, that you're different but you just want to be normal. And so as a result, at the age of 18, I was suicidal. I remember leaving church one Friday night, looking at the boulevard and just imagining what it would be like if it were just over, if the pain ended. And I would step in front of one of these trucks and looking back, I just feel so much empathy for little Logan and, knowing that he was just trying to get out of that pain.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I don't know how I made it through that night. I don't know how I got through that. I do kind of imagine that at some point, I didn't want to hear my mother kicking my ass, from beyond the grave for giving her more trouble for killing myself.
Yeah.
I mean, you know how that goes. Don't give your mother and her baby cubs.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is, it is unfortunate because, like you said, it wasn't even about just being, like you said, the popular kid, but now you can't even relate to the topics and everything else that at school's going to. So it goes way different than just not having the right clothes or right shoes or any of that stuff. Now you can't even relate to the conversations and, talk about the game the next day or any of that stuff. So there's zero chance that you're ever going to fit in because you don't even know how to relate to them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And kids are ruthless. You know this,
Yeah.
growing up in grade school, elementary school, etc. Not being able to have chocolate, not being able to go over your friend's house and celebrate their birthday, not being able to play at recess. But kids
Yeah.
don't understand it when you're in kindergarten, first, second, third, that like there's a religious difference. And like I could barely understand it and I was living it. It just was a really difficult mental struggle that I had to navigate. And all in all, now that I'm an adult, I understand that, maybe I wouldn't have made every choice that my mother made. My mother, God bless her soul, she's passed on now. But I understand she was really trying to make me the best version of myself and make sure that I got what I needed to. Ultimately, the biggest takeaway that I have from my mother and that experience is through a lot of fucking hardship, I have become one of the most mentally resilient persons that I know because of just having to be resilient.
Yeah.
But that's not without a few trips to Rock Bottom Hotel, let me tell you.
Absolutely. I mean, that's, I always tribute that to our veterans as one of the problems. We don't know how to give up. And, when you're that person that's looking down and waiting for this person to hit rock bottom so that you can help them back out, and you look down and you say, are you there yet? Are you done digging this hole? And that soldier looks up and says, hold my beer. I can keep going. And they just keep digging till they get to the point where they don't even see the top anymore. They just say, I'm tired, I'm done, and end it. And it is unfortunate. Like yourself, I was kind of lucky when I got out. My attempts didn't happen because I got caught and my wife found out. And later looking back, especially as I was writing that book, I realized I didn't want to die. I just didn't want to live. And that's the big difference. I hated myself so much that I wouldn't even allow myself to love myself or do anything or allow anybody else in as well. So I do understand that part of it. And it sounds like to me, even a part of that was similar to you. You just wanted the physical pain to end as far as the way you're living. It wasn't that you wanted to die. You just wanted something different. And it is tough because when every physical control is out of your control, you take the one option that is in your control. And it does create more pain and more problems for those living. I think your mom would have came after you and said, no, you're going to live here just like you lived there. Nice try.
So true. Oh my goodness.
So you get to the age and you get past that stage. At some point you determined there's an alternate route. Let me look at the military. And how did that come about?
Great question. And I think about it now, as an adult, it is a fucking amazing journey. As a child, I remember looking back up in my backyard and seeing the airplanes fly into, Chicago Midway, Chicago O'Hare, and always just imagining what the journey those people are going on, where they've come, where they're going, what cool things are they doing. And so ever since I can remember, I've always wanted to be a pilot. And so I didn't want to have my mom pay for pilot school because I knew she was poor and I didn't want that burden on her. So I chose to join the Air Force with the intention of becoming a pilot. At the time, I wore glasses and my eyesight was too poor to fly. By the time I got eye surgery, I was too old to begin pilot training. So there's kind of the luck of the draw, as it were, for that. Yeah. But ultimately, it came down to running away. I really wanted to get out of my current situation as a child, living in the cold, being under such a protective mom, and just live my own life. So I joined the Air Force and I managed airport operations for 12 years, active duty all over the world, Alaska, Belgium, Korea, et cetera. I had a blast, met some amazing people, but, I ended up getting married pretty early at the age of 19 and with 3 children. And I went on 2 tours to Iraq. And as in the Air Force, a lot of times we're on the base. We're not outside the wire fighting the good fight like a lot of great folks. But, it's a different type of support. And so I was at a assignment, Joint Base Balad, LSA Anaconda. And it's affectionately known, I'm sure many of your listeners know, it's called Mortaritaville for a reason. I mean, there's a lot hotter spots out there, but, we got attacked. I
remember we were based out of Mosul. and I was in a aviation unit as well in the Army. I remember sitting in the briefs every day, and you would see like one or two dots next to Mosul where targets were hit, and then you wouldn't even see Balad. It was just big circles of where everything was coming in at, and I was like, man, there is definitely worse places to be. That is for sure. But yeah, if the listeners don't know, you can take it from me. I seen it with my own two eyes. It is definitely Mortarville. That is for sure.
Yeah, whew, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. But, as a 20-something-year-old, you really don't understand your mortality until you go through something so intense.
Yep.
And on one hand, your body doesn't want to maintain such a high level of stress day in and day out. We got attacked 7-8 times a day.
Yep.
Small arms fire, mortars, etc. But also you're still aware, like, this is not normal. People at home aren't dealing with this. So kind of balancing both, like, how do I, maintain my awareness and stay sharp day in, day out, even while I'm sleeping, and also, like, I'm going to go home and, like, eventually I hope everything's going to be okay. And, being there, seeing such crazy shit happen, like, it changes you. It just changes you. And you have no clue, I don't think even in the perfect world, if you had all of the training, all of the technology, it's impossible to prepare someone for what that experience is like.
Yeah.
And, I was fortunate. I had good people around me when I came back to push me. I think I wasn't on the ground for a month when I came back, and I was in therapy, and I've been in therapy off and on since then. And I'm super thankful for it. Like, it single-handedly changed my life. But it's, fighting that battle of, like, trying to be present with my wife and kids. I have a photo of me on I think it's my third day home, and my daughter, my little daughter, my youngest daughter is graduating preschool, and I am just a shell of myself. I'm a blank slate. I can see how, like, not present I am, and still navigating that. And I my heart goes out to so many of our fellow brothers and sisters, because some people never leave that state, and it's so hard. And I've listened to some of your episodes. Like, you have such amazing guests that offer such amazing work to help people get through that. Please, if you're struggling, don't sit in pain. Just reach out to someone, anyone. But there's so many of us that understand what you're going through.
Yeah, you are 100% correct. And I think that's the big part of it. You get out of the military and you lose everything and gain nothing. And it's the exact opposite. You thought you were leaving nothing and gaining everything when you got out. And it is literally the exact, you lose your identity, you lose, your status in your own little world. Now you're back down to the lowest man when you go to jobs where, nobody gives a shit. You're just a number. And heaven forbid in the civilian world, if you actually go above and beyond and try to help the next guy, they assume you're trying to take their job. And so it's just a whole world that us veterans just don't understand. You're built about teamwork and one team, one fight, and the weakest link isn't the one you cut, it's the one you build so your chain's tighter. And that does not exist when you walk away. And then you still have the demons from living a life that's not normal. And if you don't find something to fill those with some sort of structure like you had, the way the military works, you're going to roam and be lost. And that's the dangerous part of our community. I don't condone suicide, but I understand it. And I agree with you 100%. There is help out there above and beyond the VA.
Absolutely.
A simple Google of small nonprofit PTSD will give you a list of non-VA related mom and pop programs that you might feel more comfortable with than, being in a big city and going to a major VA to where it's about quantity, not quality. And it's tough. So yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from. And to your point, that war took 20 years, but it took everybody. It wasn't just the guys going outside the wire. It wasn't just the guys that, was doing support or that. It took a whole team of everybody, to include the people that didn't deploy. I mean, somebody has to stay in another country to protect it as well. And that's what the things that the guests really don't understand, or the listeners don't really understand. The unit I was in, at the same time, we were in Colombia, Korea, the Philippines, America,
Iraq, Afghanistan, in a unit of, 3 regiments, and each regiment or 3 battalions, and each battalion has roughly 300 people in it, from your pilots down to your cooks. And it's just not enough, By the time the war was over, we had the Iowa National Guard coming in to maintain operations in Savannah because we didn't have anybody left. Everybody was deployed, and that's one of the reasons why I've got so many months over there is because there was no rest, and it wears on you. So I definitely get it. And to your point, I'm also, I'm writing a book about something that you just talked about. Right, my book is a fictionist book, but it's taken that play of the phrase that all veterans know. He lost his battle to his demons, or he's fighting his demons. And this book takes a play off of that, of what if those demons were not psychological? What if those demons was negativity that attached themselves to us while we were deployed and followed us back and feeds off of that guilt and that shame and everything else? And I put that in the hands of some homeless veterans that realize that's what happened, but because they're homeless veterans and alcoholics or drug users, nobody listens to them. And so that's where that story goes, is these guys are fighting real demons that we use the phrase of fighting their demons. And it's just about the point of how, the theory behind that is this is how veterans feel. They're fighting demons that nobody believes exist. And that's where it's tough. And so I get it. I get when you came back and you felt alone, because I was there, right there with you. I know what it's like to be on a base being attacked by an enemy that you can't fight back with. You're not shooting a mortar out of the sky. You literally have to live with peace of, well, if it's my time, it's my time, because there's nothing else you can do about it. So I get what you're saying. So how long total were you in with the Air Force?
12 years. A little over 12.
Okay. I'm assuming in Korea you were at Osan?
I was at the O.
Yep. I got my first tattoo there.
What was it?
It was a wizard. It was actually a logo from another tattoo shop that I seen in Ink magazine. And I don't know. I wasn't even old enough to drink yet, I don't think. I think I was 19 or 20.
You probably were in Korea, though.
I was in Korea. I went down to Osan. I got my tattoo at Mr. Kim's tattoo shop.
Were you at Suwon or Camp Kim, or?
No, I was stationed up north. I was stationed at Camp Kyle up by Camp Red Cloud.
Gotcha.
And I would come down on the weekends because my uncle was a civilian over there. He worked for the University of Maryland on Humphreys, on Camp Humphrey. So I would come down and stay with him and use your guys' nice topless bars and all that good stuff that you guys had over there. But I still remember. I still got that tattoo. It's just a little bit fatter and whiter now, like me. But
that's all good. Good memory. That's what's most important.
Yeah, absolutely. So you get out, right? And I know you said you wanted to fly, but your life takes a whole nother turn. It takes you into an industry that I'm pretty interested in as well. So you look at becoming in the TV business, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Before that, I mean, my life has taken so many crazy, wacky fucking turns. No one, you can't possibly script this shit. You know what I mean? So, when my last assignment in the Air Force was Belgium, and I was at a great little location called Chèvres Air Force Base, outside Brussels. And I was hurting pretty bad because I was going through a divorce, and my youngest was really struggling. And I was with the divorce and me being away and et cetera, and I was just heartbroken that I was breaking a promise to myself that I grew up without a dad, and I was breaking that promise to her that, I would never leave her. But ultimately it needed to happen. I needed it for myself, God bless my ex-wife, a beautiful soul. She needed it for her. We just, I got married at the age of 19. So as you grow older, you realize you're just not the same person, and your values and things change, et cetera, et cetera. So I once again found myself down at Rock Bottom Hotel, resort and casino, all inclusive. And, God, I feel like I've been there so many times. It's like, I got the frequent flyer miles. I walk in, it's like, cheers, everybody knows my name. Like, I got a timeshare at Rock Bottom Resort Casino. It's like, I've been there so many times in my life. But for some reason, every time I go down there, I find something about myself and I learn something about myself. Like even amongst, I turned to the bottle. I was suicidal again. I wasn't sleeping. I was stumbling to work at 3 o'clock in the morning in a foreign fucking country, just struggling, trying to figure out, like, I knew I had this inkling of a dream that I could maybe kind of sort of be a live television director, because as a little kid, like that was my number 2 dream. To work in live television events and be in Hollywood and do some cool shit in a live environment. Like, you don't have the opportunity to go back like, okay, we made a mistake, we'll do it again. No, you need the entire team. I wanted a piece of that.
Yeah.
And I made a promise to myself, even in that dark place. I was like, okay, if I don't fight in this incredibly dark place, and if I kill myself, my daughter will never have a closer, more visceral example of what a fighter looks like. She will always have this looming cloud over her head that my dad, the closest person, gave up. What chance do I have?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's how she would view it, but that's how I saw it. And I was like, okay. One of the things I learned in Iraq was, I felt like so many people in life had this privilege of making it out. And I somehow won this fucking lottery and I was able to leave. And perhaps there were so many more people more deserving of this life. And and I felt like I had a charge to never settle, because even in the military, I felt like I was settling. I was in my comfort zone, 3 squares and a cot, and like my family was taken care of. I was good.
Yep.
Living in my comfort zone. I wasn't pushing life. And so having that perspective, leaving Iraq, going through this divorce, coming out of, checking out of rock bottom, all-inclusive hotel, resort, and casino, I was like, hey, I'm going to really push myself and try to become a director. I moved from Belgium to LA, didn't know anyone, just with a dream and, whatever money I made on my terminal leave, selling my terminal leave back. But I was like, okay, I'm going to figure this thing out. And I knew that while I was in my 30s and my competitors, all the public production assistants were in their 18, 19, 20 range. I was like, okay, I know I have the work ethic. I know I have the grind that a lot of these kids don't have. And I remember listening to a podcast episode years ago, and they were talking about what made Jordan different, what made Gretzky different, what made Muhammad Ali different. And it was their obsession with the craft. And it was something almost, they said that while they didn't have the brain scans to prove it, but they said that they believed that there was something neurotic or almost in mental illness, how much they were obsessed with the technique, the skill, every part of their niche that made them different. I said, okay, I'm going to apply that to my game. I started reading textbooks for fun. I read interviews that the great television directors did. I cut out listening to music. I cut out a lot of negative friends. I cut out going out on the weekends because I was obsessed with this dream of, like, that's all I could think about. I had pictures on my bathroom mirror. Sometimes when I couldn't look at my own face, I couldn't deal with the sight because I was too low. I wasn't in a great headspace. I had pictures of control rooms that I wanted to work. And I'm really honored that I've been, I've been a part of some amazing productions. I've worked multiple World Series, Super Bowl. I've directed the French Open for tennis 5 times. I've been part of the U.S. Open. 10,000 hours of live broadcast directing that I'm really proud to say that I've been a part of, and I've directed, and I've had some work with some great teams. I promise, if you want your dream bad enough, you will accomplish it, but you have to want it.
Yep. Yeah, there's, and that word wanted doesn't mean, like you said, it's not I would like to have this. That's way different than wanting it. If you're sitting around and every day wanting something and all you're doing is praying for it, well, that's still the right track, but that's not the end. You still got to put in the work. Nothing will ever just be handed to you. And so I agree with you, and I fell in that category quite a bit. There was, things in the military that I wanted, but I didn't work for. And I wanted to be an all-army boxer, and it got hard, and I was married and life was still going on. And so I cut that section out of my life. I said, oh, this is too hard. I'm not good enough. That negativity that you have to cut out of yourself and cut away from you, I didn't do. And so I can relate to that part of it as well. And, I fast forward to where I'm at now, and I've learned that everything comes for a reason, right? And sometimes your dreams isn't the path that you're supposed to be on. And one of my goals and dreams was to own a business. And I did that as soon as I got out of the military. I owned a trucking company, and I did it for 6 years. Made great money, was not happy. I thought that's what I wanted. And I bragged about how good I was, and I was good at trucking. But the problem was it was just a shield. It was just a face. I really didn't care about it. And now that I don't have a job anymore, I'm retired, and I work my nonprofit full time, and I podcast full time. I make a lot less money, but I'm 10 times happier. And that path was all things like you said, hitting rock bottom, bouncing around, and taking this zigzag direction into the path that I was supposed to be on. And that's when your energy and everything around you aligns, and you finally find peace. And I think that's a big portion of where you're at. You put in the work, you put in the effort. It was the place that you're supposed to be, and the stars have aligned, and you have found some peace. I don't want to skip past it, though. I want to kind of dig into it a little bit, because that's not a easy career. My nonprofit is helping veterans go from the military to the music industry. And that is another place that is extremely difficult. You hit it right on the nail. They spend 20 years in the military and then get out and try to compete with 18, 19-year-olds. Sony says, well, I can invest in this guy that I could put on the stage now, but I get 3 or 4 years to return my money off of. Or I can develop this guy that's 18, make him a writer for a while, then turn him into a musician, and I'm making all this money for 30 years. And so getting signed is really hard when you're 35, 40 years old. And, I seen that issue. So I started this radio station to where we had a platform that was not part of Spotify, completely away, and only their music was being played, giving them the opportunity to be heard. And it's grown, and I love it. It's amazing work. And it's an industry I know absolutely nothing about, but I fake it till you make it, and it's doing good. But it is tough, and what's led me to curiosity about your side is we are in the process of trying to make a new category. The Veteran Voice Music Awards is what we're trying to do. It's just something that I want televised. A lot of people don't know it. There's a Miss Veteran American pageant. I may have said the name in wrong order, but that money that is developed, it's done just like the Miss USA pageant. The difference is all of them are female soldiers, veterans, and they compete in their states to get to the national level, the whole 9 yards. And instead of each having different charities, they're all there supporting the same charity, which is to help build shelters for homeless female veterans that have kids. And it's done every year. I thought I seen that, and I was like, man, we need something like that. And so that's where my idea to make this happen came from. And that's what got me curious about, okay, well, how does the TV work? How do you go about getting something like that on television? And it is tough, man. It's a tough industry. And you're in a town that is built full of toughness. LA is, everybody on the streets fighting for that same career path, something on television, something in the music industry, something, that's in show business. And I can only imagine how many people are standing at the door dropping applications to work in those kind of places.
The queue is long, that's for sure. I'm incredibly fortunate that, in the process for me getting to where I am, I must have cold called, hundreds of people and emailed thousands of people. And I think out of all of that work, I think I had 3 true responses. And it took me at least 6 months of banging down the President of Directors Guild door in trying to just hey, put me in touch with someone. Yeah. Give me a reference. Give me something that I will put in the work. I will provide value. I will do what it takes. But it is definitely hard. And I found a network in LA that saw my fire, that saw my passion, that saw that I was not giving up after the first no. And that's a lot of what it is. Fortunately, you got to take no on the chin and keep barreling forward. So I was able to get an interview with the network, and this particular network appreciated my accomplishments with the Air Force and said, "Hey, we'll give you a shot, and if you do well with the shot, we're gonna push you forward." But I mean, my first, I think, 6 months in the industry, I was working for other freelancers for free. That's how bad I wanted to be in this industry, and I knew I didn't have a name for myself. So as a result, to build a name, I needed to get my in. And how am I going to get my in? I had to undercut everybody. So I was like, "Hey, I'll work for you for free." And then I remember very viscerally, you know, at the time I had an envelope with my spare cash and I was down to like $250. And I was like, okay, now it's time to start charging.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's exactly the attitude of a soldier, a veteran. When they come out of the military, they approach life with the only life skill that they know from the military. And that's, you don't give up. It doesn't matter whether, if you try to do something and you fail, that may even turn out to be something you don't ever want to do, but you won't quit until you succeed. And then you decide whether you're going to move on. Okay, I beat that path. I really didn't like this. Let's do something else. But, in some cases, like you just said, it was something you wanted and there wasn't going to be a door that stopped you. You just kept walking through them. And I think that's amazing because I'm proud as a veteran to have that characteristic that travels past the military into the civilian world of they know we may not know everything, but we will put in the time to figure it out. And I think that's amazing. Going back to, so let's kind of back up a little bit because I'm sure most of my listeners don't know anything about this industry. What exactly does a live director do? And what is the normal starting positions before you get to that level?
So I primarily specialize in made-for-television events, such as sports events and sports highlight shows. I also do concerts. I also direct corporate events and festivals, conventions, things of that nature. So what I do is I sit in a control room with 150 monitors on the wall, each of them having a different source, whether it's a different camera, replay, graphics, channel, or anything. So when you're watching sports, you might see a lower third on the player bio or the batter's last hitting streak or anything like that. We have teams of folks that are furiously making sure the names are spelled correctly, the numbers are accurate. We have audio engineers that are, when you see them swing the bat, you hear the crack of the ball when they hit that bat. Then they bring up the microphones in the outfield so you can hear the ball catch in the glove. We, as a director, I make sure all of these elements come together at the right time, at the right moment, working with my producer that's sitting next to me. There's all of these control elements and all of these resources that we have at our disposal. And it's very formulaic, but you have to know when to use what resource, when, how to time it so you don't miss play action, you don't miss a key moment in a concert where, the drummer is going in for a solo, the singer is ready to have this long, beautiful, run, and to capture that emotion on their face and to be there when they transcend. I was also a alto and tenor saxophonist while I was in Korea for a band. So I love having those little moments, like capturing the intimacy of a lot of the vocalists. So in a live environment, there's so much happening. I'm talking to the audio engineers, the camera operators, the stage managers, for sports highlight shows, I'm talking to the talent and the commentators. We do pre-show meetings, post-show meetings, making sure that we are not just capturing the moment, but making people feel better than they are in the stadium, making sure we are incredibly nuanced with each of those moments to the best of our ability. How do you come up in the ranks? A lot of it is putting in the hours shadowing people that are really, really great at whatever craft you're aspiring to do. So for example, as a director, it was kind of frowned upon in my industry, but I would stand directly behind the director for hundreds of shows, just watching the cadence, watching them write notes, listening to the nuance in their voice, the hand gestures, the signals that they did with the team members, listening in on the meetings. And some of them would be a little annoyed by me. And I made sure to be cordial and
Right.
make sure they didn't feel threatened by me. But it is a process of learning the adjacent positions. So I learned how to be a technical director, the person that actually programs the video switcher and pushes the buttons that sits next to the director and executes the director's call. Insert this graphic, go to this replay, take camera 3, ready camera 4, dissolve, those types of commands. The video technical director is executing at the director's will. So it was years and years of just listening, taking notes, showing that you were willing and ready to go above and beyond. It's funny, as I was coming up through the ranks, I was working for a network, and because I was a production assistant, they gave us keys to the studio. And because we were kind of the last person in, first person out, or first person in, last person out, I should say. And I would sometimes hang around the studio and I would learn to program that switcher. And I would be there until 3-4 o'clock in the morning, just taking my time, deconstructing it, breaking the software, trying to put it back together. And I remember leaving, I lost track of time, and it was like 5 or 6 in the morning. And I left, and to exit the studio, the executive producer's office was open, and the executive producer was there early in the morning. And he was like, "Logan, what are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, sorry to disturb, sir." I was just, enamored that the executive producer knew my name. And he was like, I was like, "Hey, I was just, studying how to technical direct and teaching myself this and like practicing some things that I learned." And he was the first person, because he saw me and that passion. And that wasn't the first time he saw me. I just didn't know that he saw me other times. But he
Right.
gave me my first opportunity to technical direct a show, and I am forever indebted to him. But people will see that extra effort that you give. People will see how passionate you are about your craft and how far you're willing to go to achieve your dream.
Yeah. I mean, I think that comes to play even in the sports world. A lot of people that got drafted may not have been the best at that position at the time, but there was something in the interview process that happened. There was their work ethic that was seen. All that stuff gets seen in the background, and sometimes that's what gets them there. Versus just having the raw talent but not the ability to work for it. And I think that's very common in those types of industries. But I can't even imagine doing what you do. I'm just sitting here thinking about everything that I do to edit a video that was recorded that I'm not on a time crunch for, not trying to get a certain graphic to show up in a time frame while the customers are watching live. I can't even imagine doing that because I redo what I do about 55 times because I do it wrong. But I do enjoy it, and I learn on the fly just like that. But I could never do it the way you do it. And I just you made a very valid point because I experienced it. I love NASCAR, and I went to a NASCAR event, and watching it on TV is way better if you really care about the race than being at the stadium or the track. I learned that, and I think it's probably even the same way even at a football game because, now the game gets paused while we're all at commercials and you're sitting there in the stadium watching going, why is everybody standing around? And you don't realize that, well, the TV's on commercial break or whatever. And so I can't even imagine. And then, like you said, the stats and spelling. I'm horrible at spelling. Thank God for AI. That's all I. So I couldn't do this all on live. And I was just listening to the things that you do and the things that you have to consider. And I was like, man, that's like every single thing I've ever done crammed into do it in an hour. And there's no way I could do it. Nope. My hat's off to you, man.
It's so much fun. I can't tell you. It's like playing a video game. Honestly, I'm just a guy. Anybody can do it. It's, muscle memory. It's repetition. Things happen in a certain time. You want to be there. It's so much fun. But I'd love to work with you on the veterans music. I mean, if anyone out there is with the veterans Miss America or Miss Universe, like, please reach out to me. I'd love to collaborate. Like, this is what I live for. Making in live environment, making something accessible to everyone and available I'm happy to collaborate and share my talents. Like it is kind of rare and not many people have a need for it. So I'm excited to help out.
Absolutely. We're in the process of fundraising now. I went to my first event. I mean, I hit everything. My last event I went to set up a booth was at a paranormal event and up in Gettysburg of all places. And I live in Missouri. So I don't recommend ever do this. I drove a Corvette that I just bought a few months ago with me and 2 dogs and drove it 2,500 miles round trip. It was fun for about the first 300 miles. After that, I got really sore, but I had a good time, and I'll take the Jeep next time. But I go to all these events. What's that?
Built for speed, not for comfort.
Absolutely, you feel every single bump. I don't care. And one of my dogs is, I had 2 dogs. One was on the floorboard in a little bed. She's 14 pounds, and the other one's 74 pounds doing circles in this little tiny chair. Like, how am I going to lay here? But I had a good time, and I discovered how many veterans go to those kind of events. And like you said, the drive, I go out not asking for money. I go out and hand out cards with how to download the app and everything else. The app's completely free. You don't even have to have an email. There's no account. You just literally download and hit play. And I've created AI DJs. So there's DJs all day long. And I just go out trying to get that listener base built, because that's what it's all about. It's about these guys' music being heard. And then somebody that's part of a veteran event says, hey, that guy's really good. I wonder if he would come and play here. And next thing you know, I've connected 2 people, and a veteran's getting paid to do what he loves doing. It's therapy for him. It's putting food on his table. And there's nothing better than that. So I love it. The part where we're at is this year we were going to do it in November, and my mom passed away too, and there's only 3 of us that do this, and so the fundraising just didn't happen, and there was a couple months that I just had to step back and deal with myself instead of all this other stuff, and so we ended up canceling it for this year. But that's what we're doing now, is we're fundraising to come up with the money to make this happen. 2026. Yeah, if we get the money and the funds, I'll definitely reach out and take all the advice that we can and the help that we can get, because I'm not very good at it. I've tried to live stream some events and doing it live and setting everything up, and then you realize, oh, it works, and then as soon as the show starts, it doesn't work. What the heck? So, but I don't do it for a living, thank God. Luckily I'm not charging people, or there'd be a lot of refunds.
It's an art in a weird sort of way. It is a technical art to pull off some of these events in a live environment. And in my mind, I kind of think of it as a symphony, with the foundation and the core being the engineering team, and making sure, all the routes that are used to be hard cables that are now digital, making sure that the announcer can hear, the other announcer that's in another country, or the puck hitting the goal, or, whatever the case, making sure all of those things come off flawlessly in the moment. It's really beautiful. It's a symphony.
Yeah, I agree. And that's another reason why NFL Sunday Ticket gets almost $400 for me a year, because I love watching football. And man, I remember, as you can see, I'm a huge Bengals fan.
Oh, yeah.
There's Ken Anderson's autographed jersey from the 70s. That was his 81 MVP jersey. I just remember how horrible it was on TV growing up compared to now. Now there's cameras on rope or cable and running back and forth, and it's just
pylon, helmet cameras, and all sorts of craziness.
Yeah, it is, and the sound, like you said, you can hear people hitting each other, and it's just, man, you guys are what makes the TV, the behind the scenes stuff, because we take it for granted as the viewer, just thinking that's the way it should be. But I can tell you, it wasn't always that way.
True.
The technologies came a long ways, and the cost. I've got several thousands of dollars just wrapped up in the equipment I use. I use stuff that Joe Rogan would never use, I can promise you, because I don't have that same budget. But I do multicam angles, edit multi-camera. All the events that I've gone to, I try to put cameras behind the drummers that shines down on the drummers. I do all that type of stuff. And unfortunately, it also requires a good internet source. And there's a lot of variables that are out of my control because I don't have the money to make all that stuff and bring it with me like a company would. But over time, I've built this equipment up. I've been buying it. I got a video switcher, probably a lot cheaper than the ones that you guys use. It works. It was $800. It's got 4 channels. I'll take it. It works.
I love it.
But it is fun and I enjoy it, man. I really do. Whether I'm good at it or not, it is in a way kind of therapeutic. It takes your mind. You have to focus on what you're doing, and there's structure to it, and those are important parts to anything that a veteran's going to do. I see a lot of these hunting nonprofits out there, and some of them are great. And the ones that think that it's about teaching you how to do it and then letting you do it, and it's the crawl, walk, run phase is great for veterans because it puts you back in that mindset of following steps, following directions, and doing it. And then you got the ones that say, here's the deer stand, go sit out there for 8 hours. And what you really did is you gave somebody that's struggling a gun to sit alone for 8 hours staring at the woods with no direction. And those are not as helping as something with structure and teaching. So there is a lot of programs out there. And I think the key to it is structure. Like you said, learning the commands and learning the steps and the process and everybody else's job. Those are all structure components that help keep your mind off of the demons and the other problems. And then when you are doing something like what you're doing and you see the end result, I mean, you get instant satisfaction because I can see what we started with to what it ended with. And man, that's just amazing. I know we're getting to the top of the hour. I want to kind of throw a few fun questions out there. Long day. You're at work. You got done at 3:00 in the morning. What are you going to go home and eat? What's your go-to meal from a long day?
Oh my goodness. So I'm on kind of a wellness journey now, and I am trying to avoid the sweets, but I definitely have a sweet tooth. Like I am an ice cream guy. Yeah. Nothing just coats me and like gives me a nice little hug like some, pralines and cream or like a honeycomb ice cream or even just plain vanilla. I'm such an ice cream guy.
I can relate. I have a sweet tooth too. And I am going to be completely honest. After taking some gummies right before I go to bed to help me sleep, I always end up a couple of hours later getting up and I buy them at the grocery store. They're designed for baking, but it's Hershey with almonds and they're the big bars that you're supposed to. I always end up going back up out of bed and walking out there and breaking a few pieces off and going back to bed and eating some Hershey's with almonds just because of the sweetness. And I don't know if it's related, but it all started after I started taking the gummies. But but I do. I love it. I love chocolate. I love ice cream, hot fudge. Absolutely. So I can relate to that. If you had to, after a long day, you hit play on your playlist, what is the first song that you're hoping is on it?
Great question. My taste kind of varies depending on whether I'm in vacation mode, I'm getting ready to go on vacation, or if I'm need to chill out or in a meditative state, or I am just kind of hoping to, after a long day's work, I don't know, maybe like a John Mayer's Gravity. I don't know, that song that he does live at the Nokia, it's always a fan favorite.
Absolutely. Living or dead, who's the one person you would invite to enjoy some ice cream with?
I don't know. I feel like the Dalai Lama has some interesting thoughts.
I could relate to that. I didn't expect that, but yeah.
They seem to have it all figured out. I could learn something from you. We can enjoy some ice cream together.
Why, he would learn something too. Like, what is ice cream?
It's true. I wonder, does he enjoy ice cream?
Absolutely, man. Well, I know you're in the process of writing a book. I'm going to give you the opportunity to share your information of where people can find you, follow you, where they'll be able to get the book once it's launched, and all those good types of things.
Awesome. I appreciate that, Donald. As mentioned, I am writing a book. It is kind of a love letter to my children. I started it in Iraq because I didn't know if I was going to make it back, about the things that I've experienced. And I kind of put it on the shelf. And now that I'm kind of on this part of the experience of, being in television, being relatively accomplished, I'm picking up the book and I'm like, okay, what can I give to people? How did I get here? And what can I give to other people to make sure that they have the tools to accomplish whatever your dream is? And so what I've learned is I've learned a lot about, manifestation and the power of positive thinking, the power of negative thinking. But I'm like, okay, on one hand, it's cool, but I really want to understand, like, from a science perspective, why does this work? Why does the brain chemicals do what they do to allow, like, is there any science behind this? And so just as a quick niblet, a lot of what we identify about ourselves and who we are is based in misrepresented thoughts or ideas about ourselves. We tend to focus on the negative as just that's how our brain is wired. And 30% to 60% of what we tell ourselves about ourselves is negative or inaccurate in some way, shape, form. And so when understanding the power of positive thinking and making sure that we're focused on the right thing. I don't know how many of you out there have been skiing, but when you're skiing and you're off-piste and you're kind of in the trees and you're kind of creating your own path, you don't look at the trees, because wherever you look, that's where your attention goes and you're going to hit the tree. You want to look at the gaps in the tree and create your path. And when you do that, when you focus on the path, that's where you go. And so I dig into the science-based path that your brain uses and how people get manifestation wrong, how people get manifestation right, health and wellness, personal development, professional development. I dig into all of this in my book. Go to the website, the Logan Unlimited, TheLogan Unlimited.com. I'm on the Logan Unlimited on Instagram. Follow me. We get into all this stuff, subconscious mind, like the science-based, not the misty woo-woo stuff, the science on how all of this works. Fucking fascinating.
Yeah, you hit it right on the nail. And man, Logan, I appreciate you coming on. I had such a great time and learning a lot about things that I want to do in the future as far as for the radio station and how things happen and everything else and learning about your life. I think you've shared a lot of good points with people that can relate and maybe their circumstances are just a little bit different, but the end result to get out of them is exactly the path that you took. And they can learn a lot from that. Like you said, if you need help out there, there's people that's out there. Feel free to reach out to me or anybody else. And if I know of a resource, I will point you in the direction. I do it all the time. I get emails from or Facebook messages where somebody just shows me a chat of somebody that was looking. This last one was somebody that knew a veteran that's house was falling apart and needed some minor repairs. And they were going to hire some college kids to do it for that veteran for free. I showed them that there's actually a nonprofit out there that does do home repairs for veterans that aren't able to do it themselves anymore, or they're getting up in the elderly age. And they work with another group that puts roofs on homes for veterans that own their own house but can't afford to get a new roof. I mean, there's a lot of good programs out there, but these are the mom and pops that don't have a advertising budget. So it's hard to find them. So I appreciate you sharing your wisdom and your knowledge. I appreciate you coming on. I'd love to have you back on anytime. So when you get ready to launch your book, reach out to me and we'll bring you on and promote it as well. So I appreciate again, all y'all listeners, man, make sure when you see this, the links are going to be in the bottom. Follow him, go to his website, keep track of where the book's at, and make sure you purchase it. Because books nowadays are wrote by people that are passionate, not looking to get rich. Trust me, they won't. But it is something that they're passionate about. They're documenting their stories, and it's something then that I'm dear to my heart that needs to happen. Everybody has a story, and it needs to be documented so that 30 years from now, you don't have to worry about what's being taught. People can hear your story live, in person, in books, wherever, right? So y'all take care. Be safe. Remember, don't let the day kick your ass. Kick the day's ass.